Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants, with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA, and Joe Brianti of JLB Business Consulting. Each week, we chat with amazing guest experts, all aimed at helping you grow your VA business. So sit back, grab a cuppa, and tune in for a fun-filled episode. Welcome, listeners, to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants. And Joe and I are here on January the 7th. So this is our second new episode of 2021. Well, second new recording, because we by the time this one goes out, there'll have been a few that have gone out that we recorded before Christmas. So the topics slightly change. So since we recorded on Tuesday, Joe, I don't know what's been going on in your neck of the woods, but we've had a full lockdown announced as of midnight tonight. So as of midnight Thursday night, the 7th of Jan, for 2 weeks, which means with any luck and a fair wind, it will be lifted for my birthday, which would be quite nice.
Oh, that's very nice. Very exciting. Have you got any birthday plans?
No, probably not, because I don't think anything's going to be open, to be honest. I mean, they may say that this particular lockdown ends, but they may extend it. It just depends on what's going on. It depends how things go. But we have our second jab coming up on Wednesday next week, and we're quite kind of in a funny kind of way looking forward to that and getting that. But we're being very good. We're not really going anywhere or doing anything. So,
And have you had the Pfizer or the other one, or is there another vaccine?
We've had the Pfizer Moderna one. And we will get the second batch from the same one. The biotech ones are arriving here today. So second lot, the shipments of more of the Pfizer one, more Pfizer Moderna and the biotech, they're all arriving. The second lot are all arriving quite soon. So they can carry on vaccinating people, but they've vaccinated 1.5 million people in the first 3 weeks. It's just been amazing.
Wow.
So, that is all the over 60s. Well, not all of them, but many of them. So that's quite good.
A really, really good rate. So does that mean that you are slightly safer in terms of your immunity? I'm not quite sure how it's working.
I think the idea is, I mean, you still have to wear masks and you still have to do social distancing and hand washing and all of the other things that we've been doing the whole time. I think it just means that you'd be less susceptible, right, if you came in contact with it. And the other side of it, from what I'm hearing, is that if you were unlucky enough to catch it, the infection would be milder.
Right.
So, on both of those counts, in my mind, it's a good thing. So,
yes, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
So we're just, they're carrying on a pace. The trouble is, it's a small country and, it doesn't sound much in relation to the UK cases per day, but it's proportionately, it's about the same proportion. So it's still going, it's still happening. And it's because there are pockets of people who don't keep the social distancing and don't wear masks and, go to events and things like that, have get-togethers, and then only one person needs to be infected.
Yeah.
And
definitely
raging, what's it, haven't you?
Yeah.
But let's talk about nicer things.
Yes.
What have you been doing since Tuesday?
Actually, homeschooling is going really well this time. The teachers had pre-prepared ahead of this week a whole batch of stuff from doing. So they've been doing about 4 or 5 hours a day of schoolwork, which is quite good. As of next week, they're on live lessons, so they have to be in school uniform at 8:30.
My goodness.
In front of their device for registration with their tutor. The lessons, because they're live, are slightly shorter.
Yeah.
So they're 45 minutes instead of 1 hour, but the 45 minutes will be with the actual lesson teacher.
Yeah.
So next week they'll have full school days.
Wow. That's
So,
going to be tough, actually, sitting all day in live lessons. I know because I deliver
yeah,
virtually. That's how I work. And, hats off to the teachers because it is so
yeah,
challenging
yeah,
to make those lessons engaging and to keep the children's attention. It's not like I'm teaching adults who want to learn how to do something in Microsoft and they've paid to do that.
yeah.
You've got these children who haven't paid and actually probably don't want to be there, so it's doubly challenging.
It's also, I guess, and I know from my own perspective, working a lot on Zoom, if you're on Zoom all day or Teams all day, by the time you get to kind of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you're starting to flag, aren't you? Your eyes are
Yeah.
tired. So, it's really hard. So it might be that they don't do a full school day, but they have live sessions,
Yeah, and it's going to be different for everyone. I'm seeing a lot on social media. Homeschooling, it seems to be the hot topic of hosting as opposed to conversation at the moment. But and I'm heartily glad and count my blessings that we no longer have to do any of that. So
how are they managing it over with you in Israel?
I don't think I don't know, to be honest, because my son's children have been at school up to today.
Right.
Although they kept two of the girls off this week because they've been closing down classes right, left, and centre because of infection. So my daughter-in-law thought if anybody catches it and then has to be isolated, that makes life so much more difficult. So she'd rather have them off, and so two were at home and three were out. And she's working in the evening. I mean, she always worked in the evening, but now she's an accountant and she works remotely. So she's forced to work after they've gone to bed. She always did a bit in the evening, but now her whole working day effectively is in the evening, which, it's tough. And it's tough for like for many VAs, their working day will have shifted. They will be working when they would have been relaxing in the evening because they've spent the day being teachers or trying to be teachers. So I think it's really tough for everyone. We just have to all count our blessings that we're healthy.
My new mantra is this too shall pass.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think
because
it's a very good one.
There's no getting away from the fact that it is tough, and I'm finding it tougher this time than I did the first lockdown. But it's not going to be forever, is what I keep telling myself, and this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And that helps, and if that's the one little gem I can share with people today, is that this too shall pass.
I think you're absolutely right. It will. It definitely will. And yeah, it will. I mean, anybody that's ever gone through a difficult patch in their life, when you're in it, it feels like it's never ending. But when you come out the other side, you realize it's not, never ending, and it did pass. And if you've been through a difficult patch and you got through it okay, then you just need to dig into that resilience that you had from that experience and bring it into your life as it is at the moment. But so let's change the subject and get a bit more upbeat and cheerful. I've been sharing stuff. I've been sharing lead magnets and new course sign up pages and all sorts of things like that this week. So I've got 2 new offerings out. One is an ebook, 8 top tips, which will save you hours. And I also have started on my perfect PowerPoint creation course. I started recording that on Monday. So I'm quite excited. I haven't done as much as I'd hoped. But the recording process for a course is quite arduous, and I like to get it as close to perfect as I can. So often there are retakes and re-records and all sorts of things. So that's in the works. So that's quite exciting, and you can sign up to get on the wait list. Although hopefully by the time this episode airs, it will have been released by then. But the 8 top tips, I noticed that you sneakily downloaded it, Jo.
Oh yes, yes. I took a look at it, and there were some really good tips in there.
Okay.
Anybody who hasn't seen it should get it.
What was your, at the risk of embarrassing you, what was your favourite one?
Gosh, now there was one about Outlook, and yes, I can't remember it.
Quick steps.
That's it. Quick steps.
Quick steps. Yeah. One of my favourite things. Well, everything's my favourite thing, but one of my real favourite things in Outlook is quick steps. So perhaps we can talk about it later afterwards, and I can explain what a quick step is. But for now, I think it's time to get ready to welcome Ali Meehan, who is Costa Woman, into our mini remote studio. Ali will be coming to us from Spain. I'm in Israel. Joe's in London in the UK. So it's another real international episode. How exciting is that? We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back, listeners. And now we have with us the wonderful Ali Meehan, who's joining us somewhere from Spain. Is that right?
Absolutely, near Malaga. Good afternoon. Hi, Shelley. Hi, Joe.
Hi. Fantastic. Yeah, so as I just said before, we were really, really international today. Sometimes we're only semi-international with Joe and I in 2 different countries, but now we have 3 countries, which is amazing. And it's just incredible. And for those of you who don't know Ali runs Costa Woman. And I'm actually going to ask Ali to tell you all about herself and what she does, because it's quite fascinating. She's won loads of awards as well.
Sure, yeah. So I am founder of Costa Women. I started Costa Women in 2010, so it's our 10th anniversary last year. We are a women's networking community based in Spain, although we have many members that are thinking about moving to Spain. So if you're thinking about it and you're not quite 100% sure, do come and join us. It's completely free at costawomen.com. And we organise local events in 38 different locations.
Wow.
We have 9,800 plus members. And we offer both social and business networking. So it's not just social and it's not just business, because we aren't defined by businesses. We are people, women in our own right. So we offer both opportunities.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. What's the weather like in Malaga? To start on a really mundane question.
It's pouring with rain. And it's actually cold.
Can I just say that makes me feel so much
better?
We woke up to -3 here this morning, and when I knew we were going to talk to you in Spain, I had visions of you, not necessarily in sun drenched, but quite a bit warmer. So.
Yeah, for the podcasters, I'm not in a bikini. It's rather cold here today.
And we've been having actually a really mild winter. We had some really torrential rain in November, early December, and it's been like spring, and it was 23 degrees outside today.
Wow.
In fact, I didn't want to put on my woolly winter dress that I've been wearing. But I don't know what it's like in Spain there for you, Ali, but here our buildings are built for the heat, because most of the year it's hot. So when the temperature drops, the buildings get cold very quickly. It's all concrete and tile floors and bare walls, and people don't have carpets and curtains and all the soft furnishings that hold the heat. So when the temperature drops in the evening, because it does in the winter, then it's really cold.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like, ooh, I'm being a bit of a wimp here. I'm from the UK, but it's cold.
Yeah. Well, one top tip is to burn candles. I don't know if you do that.
No, I don't.
Because they take the damp out of the air. So make it warmer. Yeah. So that's one tip.
That's a top tip, and it's going to make it smell nice as well. So
absolutely.
2 things to do. 2 things. So you've travelled a lot, haven't you?
I have.
In your career. So before you established Costa Women, I'm going to ask you about all the events in a minute, because that's really intriguing. But what did you do before that?
I've had various different careers. I started off in a law firm. I worked 17 years for a law firm, and then they let me have a sabbatical because I've been there for so long. And I went to live in Australia. And then had to come back because my father had Alzheimer's, so I felt I really needed to be back with my family. And then I got headhunted for a job working as an export sales manager. So I then traveled the world as an export manager, selling container glass. So that was glass bottles and jars around the world. And also did their marketing as well for the company, which was when I started really looking into the whole world of marketing. And then I became actually a virtual assistant for a company, which was, it was quite a funny story. The day I was supposed to be an office-based job. The day I started with this company, which was an oil and gas business development consultancy based primarily in the Middle East, the big chief came in on my first day of work within my first 5 minutes and fired the man that had employed me because he'd literally just been to an e-business seminar, and this was in 2000, so pretty early days, which said nobody's going to work from offices anymore. Everyone's going to work from home. So he thought, well, we had a very expensive office in Cobham in Surrey. There's no point in us actually having this office. Let's just use Regis as our base and all work from home. So my first day could have been my last day. He said he would let me stay on and pay a bonus if I stayed on to help them close the company. So I helped them close the company. And then when I started asking if I could go for job interviews, he said, no, we've decided we want you to stay on, but you'll have to work from home. And I'll make you a director of the company. So that was a bonus. So I was probably the first or one of the first few people in Dorking in Surrey who had internet connection to their home. And that was in the old days of
ADSL.
Yeah, exactly. And that wonderful noise that you used to get when you connected to the internet. And it just went on from there, really. So I ended up working for them for 9 years. Wow. And we ended up moving out to the Middle East with that company, and lived in the Middle East for nearly 5 years. And then we moved to Thailand and lived there for nearly a year as well.
Gosh, so a real globetrotter you are.
Yeah, and very varied careers, and they've all given me a rounded, I think, view of life and working.
Yeah, that's fascinating. A real kind of portfolio career. I have a friend I met through networking, a guy, Jay Blake, and he talks very much about having he's actually was a brilliant videographer and photographer, but he does all sorts of other things now. And he says he has a portfolio career, so he can do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other, which is really cool. So so you've worked as a virtual assistant, which is before the days of real virtual assistants. Yeah. And I remember a dial-up connection that was awful. When you think about it now, no comparison. So what do you have any tips? And also you talked about there learning about marketing for that company. And before that, you mentioned about in Spain now, you organize 38 events. So that's kind of quite a task, isn't it, to organize all those events? What kind of events are they?
So we do everything from business networking to social events. Normally we would have 20 events a month, but because of COVID, they're mainly online at the moment, although Spain is a bit more open than it is, say, in the UK, but most of the events we're doing are still online. So since March, we've done over 230 online events, everything from Pilates classes to, we actually ended up doing our International Women's Day conference online, 24 hours before we were supposed to have the event, 200 guests, people flown in from all around the world. We got told, no, we couldn't do it. So
yeah,
we had to go
I wasn't coming to that. I remember talking to Jackie Groundsell, who we've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
I remember talking to her, we were having a chat, and she was telling me how devastating that all was when you couldn't do that. Jo, have you got any questions so far for Annie?
I am blown away by the thought of 24 hours turning around in person to online with 200 women. And how do you get hold of them if they're all sort of midway and all of those?
Yeah, I know. That
very challenging.
Yeah, that was a challenge. I think that the thing is to always have a plan B. So I had already thought, because Jackie and I had been talking for several weeks before the event, what happens if it does get closed down? So I'd already thought, right, we'll put it online. And because I've been using online for a long time, it didn't really faze me, the fact that we were going to have to do it online. So we literally just took the whole program and just went with the program that we had planned anyway. The speakers all came here. Actually, it was filmed here in my lounge, which podcast viewers can't see, but it was here in my lounge. And we just went with the program and went live with it. But I think it's always a good idea to have a backup plan, and that's a good tip actually for VAs. I think we're all a bit guilty of not backing up laptops, not having things in clouds, and then of course when you lose things, it's devastating. So do try and have a plan B.
That's amazing. So do you physically arrange all the events, or do you have a team that helps you with all of that?
I have volunteer hosts for most of the locations. If it's more like the International Women's Day, that would be my event. But and the business networking, I tend to do most of those myself now. We did have a team that organised different networking events in different areas. But actually, one of the joys of COVID, and we do have to celebrate some things that do go right in COVID, has been that we've been able to connect women from all parts of Spain and outside of Spain because it's online. And over the last 2 years, we've actually built a really good relationship with the Women's Network in New York City. And we now have a monthly call with them. 1 month it's a member of Costa Women who does the talk. The next month it's one of their members. So there are bonuses actually to COVID.
I've noticed that. I'm part of a trainer community, and we have monthly get-togethers in different regions. It was all regional before because it was in person, but what's great now, I'm in Israel, so I could never go to any of them. To be in Brighton or Bournemouth or Edinburgh, all over the country. But I've been able to join some of them because it's all been online. So for me, that's definitely been a benefit. So I think us learning to be online is a huge thing. And it's interesting that you say that boss was back in 2000 when you first did this kind of remote working. And it's taken 21 years for us to realize it properly, and actually have the technology and tools to enable it to happen. What platforms do you use for your networking, or is it all Zoom?
So we're using Zoom. At the moment, I've been using Zoom for a long time to do record interviews, so that wasn't a new platform for me, but I think Zoom has been really good, and especially the paid Zoom where you can have breakout rooms. So we tend to use those a lot, and also the whiteboard and the different functionality. I think the thing with any technology is not to be afraid of using it, and learning how to use it. My husband always says you either learn it now or you learn it in the old people's home, but you're going to have to know it as we go through life.
Woman after my own heart. Me and technology, my thing. So that's what I love doing, learning new bits and pieces.
We're looking actually for our next International Women's Day conference at using Hopin.
I love Hopin.
So
I can have a chat with you about it afterwards if you like. I've presented on Hopin 3 or 4 times for other organizations, and each one uses it differently. What it does have is the ability to have networking and to have booths. So you can get sponsors to have a booth, and also you've got the sessions which can be live or pre-recorded. I would suggest that you have I'm going launching into it now, that you do them pre-recorded. It works better from a timing perspective, so you've got your continuity person, and the sessions are pre-recorded. Also, if it's anything like the stuff that I present, when you share your screen, it doesn't share, it's small. You can't see it. So pre-recorded sessions for me, I've done a few now on Hopin, and as soon as everybody switched to pre-recorded, the quality for the viewer is much better. But there are other platforms. I've recently come across another platform called Remo, which is lovely.
I've attended one event. I'm hoping to go to another one in the near future. And that one really simulates a networking environment because you have tables.
Yeah.
So you log in and you can see a floor plan. You can see different plans, but you see a floor plan and you go to a table and you can join the conversation in that table. And it's a bit like this, so we can all see each other. And then you can leave that table and go somewhere else, talk to some other people.
Right.
And then they can bring everybody back into the main room, if you like, and have a speaker. I'm going to explore that one a little bit more because I thought it was quite fun.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think the difference probably now from when I was a VA is the amount of technology you have to know. And I say have to, you actually, you don't have a lot of option because whatever customers you have or clients that you have, they always expect you to know the software or to know what's the best type of software for them.
yeah.
So it does make it a bit of a challenge nowadays.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Jo? Bring you in a bit.
I really like Remo. I've had a look at it when I was talking with a prospective client just before Christmas, and I like the look of it, but I've never worked with it. And I've heard of Hopin. It was used at a local business expo type thing where they had people who would normally have the stand in the hall.
Yeah.
They had a booth, and then they had other sections where you could go and do this like speed networking almost like round a table type scenario. And then there was another section where you could go and listen to a talk, and all of this could be going on at different times and at the same time. So I could choose to go to speed networking, or I could continue moving around the booths to visit the stands I wanted to see. So that's quite nice.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about the speed networking is I thought you could feel a bit like the when you're at school and they picked you for the football team, the rugby team or whatever, and you were, you're given, I think, 2 minutes, and you can choose to continue the conversation. If people keep saying, "No, I don't want to talk anymore," you might feel a bit
complex.
Yeah, exactly.
The networking that I experienced with that was you just go in and you say that they're going to just connect you with the next available person, but I didn't experience a time limit, so I don't know if it's something that's it wasn't advertised as speed networking, but it was a really cool platform, and the platform they used before that, or this particular organization, was Comcast, something like
Comcast.
Comcast. It was which was also very nice, but Hopin was better, so it just worked better. But that's fun. So have you got any top tips for somebody working remotely about what they should be thinking about when they're working remotely?
I mean, I would. There's various things. I would say definitely you need to invest in yourself. And have that as part of your business expense, because there are so many platforms that you probably need to know, or at least know something about, that allocate part of your month to training, and actually schedule it in the diary and have it there as something that you do on a regular basis, whether that's listening to podcasts or reading books or reading blogs or doing online training. You really do need to keep your training up.
That's a wonderful tip. I wholeheartedly endorse that one. For me, a day that I don't learn something new feels like a little bit of a waste. It might be only something really small, but I think it's just important. It's important to keep your brain active as well, in a different way, to work way as well.
Yeah, I think another thing would be to make sure you do a lot of networking. I think we quite often get pulled into our business and don't think about the importance of networking, but especially now with so many restrictions on travel, actually meeting people, it's really important to network and get out there, and maybe even build a buddies group of other VAs that are also working from home, so that you can connect in with them and just chat over issues or questions that you may have, so that you've actually got a group of like-minded peers that you can connect with.
Yeah, that's really important. We've talked about that before. Jo, you have a little group like that, don't you?
Yeah, I'm a member of a number of networking organisations, and I run or co-run a small, very hyper local networking organisation, and it's more about a social environment. There's an awful lot of businesses where I live that are single person businesses operated from their front rooms or their kitchen tables. And, you know, some of the bigger networking groups are, or feel, maybe they're not, but they feel to them like they're out of touch, you know, things like the Chamber of Commerce and those kinds of things. So it was just developed as a social thing. And back in the real world, when we went to cafes and things like that, we would do once a month we would do a daytime coffee where some of the working mums could bring their children in prams or pushchairs, or, you know, sit them down with a cake while we all had a chat, all very social. And then another time in the month we would have maybe a light dinner, or, you know, bar snack, or just meet at a wine bar for a glass of wine. And again, all hyper social. And you would have two different sorts of businesses mingling in these environments. So yeah, very, very important, I think, networking, and not just from a business perspective, but from a learning perspective, because there's nothing like being in a room full of different businesses with a different worldview or a different skill. And just having those conversations, listening to the 10-minute talk, and then following that up with a one-to-one with somebody, you learn huge amounts all the time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was something that we did when we first closed the office in Cobham. Was I used to meet the lady that was my colleague once a month for coffee. I would pick up the post from Regis. That was my reason for being out, and then go to hers and meet for coffee. And it just made a lot of difference to know that you weren't, you know, disconnected, because in those days we didn't really have the online platforms. The whole company used to use Messenger to chat, whereas now you'd have WhatsApp or Telegram. But I think it's important to have that social connection, especially at the moment.
It's really important, really important, because that's how you build that know, like, and trust as well. And then others will refer you on to somebody when they're talking to somebody who's got the pain that you can solve. Then they can say, oh, I know Jo, or I know Ali. They can do whatever it is that you need to do. And they only get that through getting to know you over time, which is a top tip. So you're a big networker like Jackie.
I am indeed. No, very much so. And I think it's really important to network and know people, especially in Spain. It's even more important. Spain has got a bit, or all foreign countries actually do have a bit of a reputation of people reinventing themselves on the plane on the way over. So you're not 100% sure if somebody's says they are who they say they are. So it's really important to network, and here your reputation is everything. Because, you know, you've got no history in the country, so nobody knows you from school or when you were at university or college or when you were first working. So it's really important, that reputation that you build up.
So when people find work, people who are thinking, or maybe thinking about relocating to Spain, and it's really interesting, in a couple of weeks we're going to have an episode with Lucy Brazier, who has just relocated to Spain recently, and she is the owner of March and Publishing and produces Executive Secretary magazine and lots of other big events, and I'll connect you afterwards.
Please.
But she's just relocated. They've had a home in Spain for a long time, and they just decided that they were going to go. And when I spoke to her earlier this year, it was really, really, I will speak about it with her on the podcast. Their furniture had left on a lorry to go to Spain, and everything shut down. and they were left in an empty house
Wow.
with like almost nothing.
Yeah.
She said, but they were very lucky people rallied around, but they have now gone to Spain. So what do people who relocate tend to find work within the expat community? So everybody's working for everybody else, so to speak, or do people put in the effort to learn the language and work locally? How does that work?
It depends. Some people are happier working within the culture that they know, so they tend to stick within their own expat community, and that could be not necessarily just English, but it could be Finnish or Swedish or whatever. And then some people are very much wanting to get involved with the culture and learn the language and work within the foreign community. It's not that easy to get into the Spanish businesses because we have something called enchufe, which means that you literally are plugged in because of your family to a business.
Right.
So it's quite difficult to get into Spanish businesses, and you would have to have a very high level of Spanish. I have got friends that have done it. I have a friend that worked for Telefonica for a long time, and she managed to get in there, but it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And we're waiting at the moment to hear what happens with Brexit, what the actual outcome is for people moving to Spain, because the UK are now classed as a third country. So will that mean that people can't officially work here? We don't know yet.
Oh gosh. So if that was to happen, what would that mean for people who are already there? Would they have to leave?
If they're already here and they're already resident and registered before the 31st of January, or they've got 6 months actually, if they're already here and they can prove that they've been here before the 31st of January and they've got bills that they can show and they can show they've been here, then they're okay. We've come under the transition. But anybody post 31st of January who's not already registered, I'm guessing Lucy's already registered and done everything. That's why she's
I would imagine
stuff.
so.
Yeah, I'm sure she has. Then we don't know what's going to happen. We're waiting for it to be formally announced what the criteria is.
That must be quite stressful for some people, I would imagine.
Well, there's a lot of people that wanted to come here. Because of COVID, they couldn't come over. So they had planned to move to Spain this year. Maybe they'd even bought a property. And, they need to get here and get resident. But, it's really difficult you can't come to Spain unless you've actually got a residency card at the moment.
So what does it mean if
you're
you're
a Spanish national?
Yeah. So what happens if you're a third country? That's an intriguing. What does that mean?
We're not 100% sure what it means for Brits. What it means if you're American or Canadian is that you have to invest a certain amount of money or have to prove that you have a certain amount of income, and you have a non-lucrative visa, so you can't work.
You can't work. Gosh.
My understanding, Ali, from being in the UK as the third country, and I'm not 100% certain, but the government websites in the UK are suggesting you might need a work permit if you haven't become resident, but I don't know how accurate that is. I've not looked it up.
I think that's probably what could happen, that they're going to need people to have work permits, but nobody knows how long it will take to process a work permit.
Or when they're going to decide or anything.
Yeah, because obviously it's not a priority at the moment for the UK to get this organised with Spain.
No. The Brexit process actually only looked at manufacturing and products rather than services and the people element of it. There's been a lot of talk, as you can imagine, on the news and, over here about it. So, but it's not something I feel confident or expert in because I've never had to look into it from a Spanish perspective. But yes, my understanding is that there's some sort of work permit going to be coming. And in the same way as in the UK, in the UK, we have a protected list of jobs. And if you are on this protected list of jobs, you get a visa very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then you're unlikely to get a visa, or they will sort of question and go back to the company and say, well, why are you bringing in a Spanish person or a French person or whatever, when we've got X number of unemployed in the UK, and those kinds of questions. So I don't know whether that's how it would reflect on the Spanish side backwards, but
yeah, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah. So any other top tips, Ali?
Mine would be, I love niching. So you were talking earlier about, maybe friends will recommend, once you start networking, people will recommend you. And I think niching is really important. Even as a VA, it's really important, because you will find that it's easier to work with certain types of businesses, because then you can learn the tools and the skills that you need for those specific businesses. So rather than be everything to everybody, it's going to be much easier if you work with a specific niche. And I love that generally anyway, for any business, whatever it is. I think it's really important to niche.
Yeah, we've talked about niching a lot, haven't we, Jo, over the months since we launched. So it comes up in every other episode or so.
Okay.
So, because it is, you're right, such an important thing, because you can't be all things to all people. It just wouldn't work. So,
yeah, and I'm very much of the opinion that if your customers or clients aren't on a particular social media platform, don't even use it, because otherwise you end up with so many different platforms that you need to learn and use and get on top of, that you just, you don't have time to go to sleep.
Yeah, funnily enough, I was just talking to my brother before. He said, what do you use to schedule your social media posts? He's just starting to do some stuff on something he's doing. So we just had a call about all of that before. So that's very true as well. That's very true as well. It's been fascinating, and I think we're gonna wrap up. Have you got any other questions for Ali, Jo?
I have just one question left, right?
Go on, then.
You have lived all sorts of places, from very exotic to kind of more ordinary to all sorts. Why Spain? What made you land in Spain and say, this is it, this is where I'm sticking my sticking the
Good question.
as it were.
The man who's now my husband.
I
Sorry, it's nothing other than that. He actually comes from my hometown. I didn't know him. I knew his sister, but didn't even know he existed. He was already living here and working here. He came in 2000, and I met him at a party in the UK, which a friend of ours was hosting. And at the time I was working from home anyway, so I just said to my company, can I move somewhere else? And they said, yeah, that's fine. So I literally up sticks and moved to Spain. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow.
So I always thought I would live in France, to be honest with you. I love France. When I was married before, we spent all of our holidays in France, because I used to live in Kent, so it was easier to get over to France. But Spain is definitely home. I love the lifestyle. They don't work to live.
No,
sorry, they do work to live.
They don't live to work.
They don't live to work. Sorry, they do work to live. They don't live to work. And they very much live for today and enjoy today. And they're very family orientated still. It still feels incredibly safe as a woman. Most of my, I started it as Costa Women and not Costa People, because there's a very large majority of single women or widowed women living here in Spain. So I started it just for women, and they all tell me that they feel very safe living here on their own, walking about in the evening. They don't feel at all threatened. So that in today's age is very important.
It's a big blessing. That was really cool. Really good question. And yeah, it usually is something, it's often something really simple, like that's where my husband or wife or partner is from. That's really cool. But it just does help that you like it there.
Yeah, no, that would be, I do know people that, they've had to move somewhere else because of their partner or work.
Yeah.
Actually, when we lived in the Middle East, I wasn't that happy there, but we were living, it was a means to an end because we knew that we could come back here
Yeah.
at some point. So, yeah, sometimes you just have to do things for a while to get what you want.
Yeah. It's also, I have to say, a wonderful location along that, you know, Malaga and that stretch. We had our first holiday there, obviously not last year and in the recent times, but the year before last. And it was really, really lovely. I was really taken aback by what I saw there, and it completely didn't match what I'd had in my mind of that area. My boy's favorite location was Puerto Banús.
Okay.
The boats, the cars, the boats, the cars, the boats, the cars.
Yeah.
And yeah, just we had that nice little drive down towards Gibraltar and went over onto the rock, which was, it's quite strange because you drive across and you know that living there, one moment you're seeing signs in Spanish, and then the next minute you cross over this little bit of road and you can go into an East London pub where they're serving you traditional British fish and chips or pie and mash, which was quite different, but I loved it there. It was lovely, very lucky to live there, Ali.
Yeah, no, Joe, when I first moved here, I always thought Fingarola was like Margate. And that, because that's the impression that you get, isn't it, when you see it on the television? And a lot of the photos in the newspapers for Brexit always show one particular pub in Benalmadena that's got the flags outside. Yeah. And people just assume that's what it's like here. But Fingarola is very much a Spanish working class town.
Or Marbs.
Yeah, or Marbs.
When they all head off to Marbs.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it was totally different. I have to say, it was totally different to that thing. And we really loved it. And, you know, we will be back. So
good. Well, let me know when you come.
Yes.
And you, Shelley, too. And do come and visit.
Yeah, we were trying to find a neutral place. We've got kids all over the world. And we were trying to find a neutral place to meet up with our kids who are in London, where we wouldn't need to quarantine either side. And we kind of half thought of Spain for about 5 seconds. And then we realized it wasn't going to work.
No.
So we still haven't seen them. But hopefully we will have had our second shot of the vaccine next week.
Okay.
And although we are in lockdown, maybe once we come out of this next lockdown here, we might be able to travel, and if we've been vaccinated, we might feel a bit more secure about doing so as well. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But that's been fascinating, and I'm sure we've got our listeners will have taken loads of top tips. It was really interesting. And if you're thinking, listeners, of moving to Spain, then do get in touch with Ali and do look up Costa Women. All the links will be on the webpage for Costa Women and how to get in touch. And thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you for having me, Shelley and Joe. It's been lovely.
Lovely to chat.
Yeah.
And to you too.
Welcome back, listeners. That was such a fun interview with Ali Meehan of Costa Women. And I think you're all running off now to look her up, aren't you? I'm sure you are. Joe was just saying to me, we were chatting just before we started recording, that she quite fancies the idea of living in Spain. Yeah.
Yes, I love the ethos that Ali was talking about, how they work to live, not live to work. Yeah. And it's very much the same in Italy. My husband is Italian. We spend quite a bit of time over there, and it's the same ethos. Yes, they start much earlier than us in the morning, but the whole point of that is it's when it's cool, so that when it's warmer, they can take an extended lunch. Then they do it a bit later when it's cooler. And, you know, family is huge.
Yeah. Here as well, family is all important.
Yeah.
And, you know, kids go out with their parents to restaurants, and, you know, you'd think nothing of turning up at a restaurant and seeing people with babies in pushchairs and all sorts. Absolutely. I think as any kind of Mediterranean hotter country, lends itself more to that kind of open outdoor lifestyle anyway.
Yes.
So I think that's got something to do, a little bit to do with it. But what I took away from, we were just talking as well, what we both took away from that was the importance of networking. And this is the third person I think that we've had on the podcast to talk about. Yes, the third person we've had who's a major networker, because we had Jackie Groundsell, who runs a conference with Ali in France, in Spain, sorry, country's wrong, as you heard in the interview. And also we had Michelle Ibbs just at the beginning of January as well, who also doesn't run necessarily a big physical network, but is a huge promoter of networking. And we can't remember whether we chatted about this while we were recording or whether it was after we'd hit the stop button. But Ali asked me if I knew Sue France. And I then proceeded to say, yes, I did. I'd met her at a big event that I spoke at in France, funnily enough, for the European Management Assistance. EUMA, it used to be called. It's now called IMA. In fact, I'm doing some webinars for them in the next couple of months. And through that conference, I think that's how I kind of found Lucy. I think I'm sure that I know of Lucy through Sue, because I know they know each other and they speak at different events. I know another wonderful lady called Dinah Liversidge, who does a lot of work with Lucy as well. And in fact, I worked with Dinah as a mentor for about a year. So she's the most amazing. I must get her to come on the podcast. What do you think?
Yes. And am I right in thinking that Dinah, now am I getting this the right way? Dinah works with her daughter in their business. Yes. That's correct. Yes.
Dinah helps Hannah out. Hannah used to be my VA at one point as well. So it's a very small world. We were just saying how this online, especially this online world, is very small, but it does reinforce the importance of networking. And whether you meet people virtually or physically, and keeping in touch with people is really, really important. And you never know what's going to come of something. And until people know and like you, and then when they meet somebody who has the need that you fulfill, they can recommend you. But you never know when that's going to happen.
No, a few years ago, and this is something that has stuck with me, somebody said to me, you never know who somebody knows. So just because in the room, they're not your ideal client or the people that need your skills, you just don't know who that person you're talking to knows, who, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line said, do you know what? I know somebody who can help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. And it's really, I know that if I was to sit down and do the exercise that I should do more frequently, but don't, I'm sure we've all got those, to track back where a piece of work comes from, because sometimes you get somebody connects you and somebody contacts you. I had an instance, actually, I'm running a Microsoft Teams course virtually the week after next, 2 weeks time, yesterday. And I was recommended for it by somebody who'd seen me deliver something somewhere else. But I didn't know that that person was in the audience. So, and in fact, the biggest piece of work I ever got was because the PA to the finance director of a very international, prestigious company was in the audience when I spoke at the PA show, or as it was known then, office. And I was talking about exactly what they were rolling out. And I obviously solved the problem in that talk, and I landed my biggest ever contract. It was international. So you really don't know when you meet people, whether it's because, I was speaking, but it could be that I'd have been having coffee with them or standing next to them in the coffee line at the show. Similarly, talking and then eventually maybe giving your business card out or whatever you do now for that.
Yeah.
So what else struck you, Jo?
Just how interesting Ali was, and
the simplicity of a reason. And my whole, that question I asked her about, she'd lived in Australia, she's done Thailand, she's gone to the Middle East, she came back to the UK for a while, then she went somewhere else. And then she landed in Malaga, and she's been there all these years and has no desire to move. And I thought there would be something really, I don't know, just out there as to why she'd kind of put the stick in the sand and said, this is it, this is where I am. So, it was really interesting to hear her reason. But what a well-travelled lady, and I'm sure that her networking events are likely to be really exciting. Next time I'm over in Malaga, I'm going to look her up and say, have you got anything going on while I'm on holiday?
Yeah.
And meet up for coffee.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. It's absolutely the thing to do. Absolutely the thing to do. So that's it. So the other things that we did talk about, I mean, we had the ideas of when you're working remotely and niching and making sure that you network a lot. So those were kind of top tips. And then we started talking about online software, didn't we, for conferences?
Yeah.
And we talked quite a bit about Hopin, and actually after we finished recording we carried on talking about Hopin because it's the platform that Ali's looking at using for her next conference, and I've got experience of it. So we talked about that, and also about Crowdcast, which I've delivered on, and Remo. And there are loads and loads of other online platforms out there that people can use. And it's really, if you want to, if you have a client who asks you to think about setting up an online conference for them, they might then be asking you to do that research as a VA as to which is the best platform. And it's really hard because there are so many of them now, and there are new ones appearing out of the woodwork because everybody's online. So you could actually run a conference using Zoom with a series of meetings that you could just go in and out of. People would get the link to that meeting and then they'd come to the next meeting. Or you could run a long meeting and people would, you would share pre-recorded stuff in it, or you invite speakers into that meeting. But obviously then you've got to have a paid version that allows you to use it for that long. Because they are sometimes restricted. You could run a summit on things like Hey Summit. That's another one. We didn't talk about that before. But Hey Summit is one that's built for online summits. So it's another one. There are all sorts of them. And then there's the pros and cons of your speakers. Do you have them present live, or do you have them pre-record? And some of that is going to depend on the content that they are delivering, and some of that is going to depend on how control freaky you are. So,
and also remember, there were 3 of us in 3 different countries. Now, if you magnify that to an international event, there could be time differences. So it might be more appropriate to have pre-records. For instance, if you've got somebody from Australia and New York dipping in and out, then pre-records make more sense, don't they?
Well, only from the perspective, the pre-record, from my perspective, from my experience, and if I was going to do a conference, I would want pre-recorded. I think the reason for that is you can control the timing. So when you are delivering live, you just mentioned about people being all over the world. You are hostage to people's bandwidth and their computer speed and quality and all of that. So when it's a live presentation, there's very little in your control apart from the platform you're using. So if I'm in control and you've got maybe bad speakers, because we've had, instances where a microphone doesn't work or a headset doesn't work, you've got no control over that. Whereas if that is pre-recorded, then it's, let's say you were going to do a session for me, you pre-recorded it, you sent it to me, I would watch it through and I could actually come back to you and say, well, look, Joe, the quality is not good enough. The sound doesn't work, or the video is too fuzzy, or whatever. Can you do it again? Whereas if it's live, you don't have that luxury. And it's about quality control, but it's also about timing. because people coming in and people going out, they can have difficulty getting into a session on time. And also, us speakers like to talk.
Yes.
We like to waffle. So if you're not physically in the room with the person, it's really hard to get their attention and say stop. If you're in a physical room, they can have somebody at the back of the room that can hold up a sign that's 5 minutes, and your speaker knows they've got 5 minutes. But if you're virtual, you can't do that. So that's the other reason for pre-records, is to keep the flow and to keep it on track. You could use Teams live meetings to broadcast, but then you've got not very much interaction with Teams live broadcast. So it's not one that I would easily use. Yeah. But yeah, there are lots of options, and you need to do some research.
It's another rabbit hole of tech to look at.
It is one I'm going to start to look at, because I'm going to put on this year at some point the Virtually Amazing Assistants Summit, and summit, conference, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be virtually amazing though, because I think that just says it all. And so listeners, it would be great to hear from you. Who would you like to hear from? Who would you like me to approach to present at this summit? And what kind of topics would you like to hear? Because that would be most helpful in me putting a lineup together. I've got some ideas, obviously, but it's very early days yet. So Jo, what would make you sign up for a summit?
I think a mix of tech, a mix of regulation and support. So I think from a small business owner, we deal with tech, we deal with people, we deal with regulation and control in our business, maybe accounts. So something that represents all the facets of our business, and maybe, some very, very important things about looking after ourselves. Last year was really difficult. We're starting the year, as we said earlier, very difficultly. It is very important that we take care of ourselves. So maybe something on nutrition, maybe something on, good rest, good sleep, all those kinds of things that are so important for us to take care of ourselves. Yeah. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of our business or our families or any of these other things that are going on, in our individual lives.
Fantastic. Well, that's really good, because I think I've got ideas for each of those areas that you spoke about already. And we haven't talked about this before, listeners. If you think this was planned, don't, because I just sprung that on Jo.
It wasn't, absolutely.
I'm going to love everybody and leave you. It's 6:15 in the evening where I am in Netanya, and I'm going to go and make soup. And I've made some soup, but it needs to be, creamed up. It needs to be zhuzhed, as I call it, with a blender. So it needs to be blended and reheated. And I'm going to make, we've got salmon for supper tonight. So that's got to go in the oven shortly. So
that sounds wonderful. Yeah. Do you want to come over here and cook for me?
No, I'm staying. It was 23 degrees outside today. I'm staying here.
It's not 23 degrees here, so no.
It's not going to be 23 degrees here for much longer. They're forecasting next week it's going to start rain. From the weekend I think it's going to start raining and get what's quite cold for here. So but as I said when we were talking with Ali before, when it gets cold, when the temperature drops, it's really unpleasant because we don't have central heating or carpets. So it really is unpleasant. It's we have a portable heater. We have heated air conditioning, so the air conditioning can be heating. But that's desperate because I don't like it.
Yeah.
But if I'm really cold, I can go on. So that was that.
Fluffy slippers and a woolly jumper.
Oh, yes.
That's what you need.
Yeah, woolly jumper, woolly dressing gown, everything. Anyway, listeners, thank you for sticking with us for yet another episode of Virtually Amazing. And we will be seeing you next week again with our next excitingly amazing guest. As ever, you can contact me, Shelley at Tomorrow's VA, Joe at jlbbusinessconsulting.co.uk, and all our details will be on the website page that goes along with this episode. And you can find the Virtually Amazing podcast on Facebook at Virtually Amazing. So I think that's enough waffle. I've proved we can waffle, and I think it's time to wrap up. So bye for now and see you next week.
You have been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Joe Brianti. We will be back with you again next week with yet another amazing episode. See you then.